to record the session. So this is Catherine Stothart's session on Let's Talk About Conflict, how to manage conflict constructively. Now, Catherine is a fantastic leadership coach. She works with Airbus and Google. She has 2 books. Her first, which is has got stonking sales of 12,500 copies sold, is on interaction styles and is called How to Get On With Anyone, published by Pearson. And her latest book, which is a lot of the theme of this session, is on Motivation, the Ultimate Guide to Leading Your Team, which is published by Routledge. And that's based on temperament. And I am absolutely delighted to be hosting this session, and it is being sponsored by my organisation Cresco. And one of the reasons for that is having been on Catherine's training. So her organisation is called Easternwood, and Catherine has done some training on interaction styles, a modular training course. It was absolutely stand out and one of the best training sessions that I've been on for a long while. So highly recommend that. Catherine is very well known to everybody, and I'm just delighted that she's here. So over to you now, Catherine, to kick off your session on how to manage conflict constructively.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Sarah. And I'm probably now blushing as red as my top after that effusive introduction, but thanks ever so much for that. So while Sarah was talking, you probably noticed I put up just the pictures of my 3 books. The one on the left is the ebook, the one in the middle, How to Get On With Anyone, that's the Interaction Styles book, and Motivation, the Ultimate Guide to Leading Your Team, published by Routledge, is based on temperament. And by the way, on that one, it's not just a book for leaders, as somebody commented on Amazon. It is actually a book for anybody who's interested in motivation. So I qualified in type 30 years ago, and I've always been really interested in the practical applications, making type relevant to people's lives. And recently, quite a number of the teams I've been working with have wanted to get better at dealing with conflict. And as we know, type is a fantastic tool for helping people deal with conflict. So I'm just going to ask you, what is conflict? If you could just pop into chat. There's quite a few of us here, so I think perhaps we'll use chat for now. So pop into chat. What is conflict? Difference in points of view, opposing opinions, strong emotions, high stakes, clashing interests, difficulties with others, tension, disagreements, not being able to see other people's points of view, war. Yes, absolutely. Not seeing eye to eye. Yeah, lovely. Okay, so I think those comments illustrate that conflict, we often think of it as a negative thing. You know, it does cause problems and difficulties. And as I think Elizabeth has just said, values are trespassed on. But conflict can also be a good thing. So you can see from the quotes on this slide, you know, Gandhi talked about disagreement being a good sign of progress, and Margaret Heffernan talks about debate and argument leading to good ideas and true innovation. So conflict can bring good results if we handle it well, but too often it's unhelpful because our emotions get involved. So what I'm hoping to do in this session is to discuss with you how to apply temperaments and interaction styles to manage interpersonal conflict effectively. So I'm going to talk about the bear. I'll explain that in a few moments. I'll talk about the triggers for conflict, which relates to our values and our temperament. I'll talk about our reactions to conflict, which relates to our behaviour and our interaction style. And then probably at the end, towards the end, I'll touch on what I call the credit approach to dealing with conflict. It's really a set of principles. What I'd like to first do a check on, though, is find out how much you know about temperament. I'm guessing it's probably quite a lot for most of the people in this room, but Sarah will launch a poll basically asking whether you're new to temperament rather, or know just a little bit about it, know it quite well and are aware of your own temperament, or know it really well and use it with clients. Great. I think probably everyone has answered that, Sarah. So if you want to end the poll and share the results, or maybe people can see them anyway. I'm never quite sure on this. But
Can people see that?
yeah, I think they can. Great. Okay. So most people know it either quite well or very well and use it with clients, which is great. Thank you for that. And then I have another poll. I'll just go on to my next slide, which is about interaction styles. And similar questions, whether you are new to or know a little bit about interaction styles, whether you know it quite well and are aware of your own interaction style, or whether you know it well and use it with clients. Okay, so it looks like there's more people who don't know so much about interaction styles, but still quite a good level of knowledge. Brilliant. Thank you for that. And thank you, Sarah, for running those polls. So that's quite helpful for me. So one of the ways I'm just going to briefly talk about what is temperament and what is interaction styles. I'm just getting rid of that off my screen so I can see everybody. There we go. As we know, the 16 types of the type table, it's quite a lot to get your head around. Interaction styles and temperament are ways of collapsing down the 16 types into 4 groups of 4, depending on, in relation to temperament, what motivates you, or depending, collapsing them down into a different set of 4 groups of 4 related to communications, and that's the interaction styles bit. So I find them very useful because it's easier for people to get their head around 4 temperaments or 4 interaction styles than get their heads around the 16 types of the type table. So let me just say a little bit about what is temperament. So basically, temperament is why we do what we do, our inner drives to act in a way that fulfills our core needs for belonging, our core needs for competence, to be good at what we do and respected for our talents, and our core needs for freedom and autonomy, and of course our core needs for fulfilling our potential. So temperament is about these core needs that drive our behavior, our needs to fulfill these things, if you like. The first 3, by the way, belonging, competence and freedom, actually also, although temperament is a very ancient theory, they also come out in Ryan and Deci's self-determination theory. So modern psychological research supports these 3 elements as being part of the core needs that we all share as human beings. And the 4th one, fulfilling potential, of course, relates to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as you know from temperament, usually, while all of these 4 core needs are important to all of us, usually one of them is more important and drives certain patterns of behavior. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about temperament. And then interaction styles are patterns of physical and verbal behavior displayed when interacting with others, linked to underlying inner drives, beliefs, aims and talents. So in other words, it's about how fast or slowly you speak, how fast or slowly you move, linked to what's driving your behavior when you're interacting. And one of the distinctions I like to make is really interaction styles is about how your emotions work when you're interacting with other people, when you're communicating. Whereas type and the core of type, which is about the cognitive processes, are about how your mind works. So that was just a little bit of background on what I mean when I'm talking about temperaments and interaction styles. So temperament is collapsing down the 16 types into 4 groups of 4 related to motivation. Interaction styles is collapsing down the 16 types into 4 groups of 4 related to communication. And if you're not sure how your type maps, hopefully you'll be able to spot it on this table. This is not the traditional type table. This is the type table used by Type Coach. And I particularly like it because you can pick out that the columns are the temperaments and the rows are the interaction styles. So the temperaments, the names I use for the temperaments are the same names as Linda Behrens uses, and you can see I've put the type preferences alongside those as well. And down the left-hand side, we've got the names for the interaction styles. Now, I do use different names from Linda, although I am using Linda Behrens's interaction styles model. I use different names basically because when I published my book, the publisher wanted me to use one-word names. So mobilizer is in charge, navigator is chart the course, energizer is get things going, and synthesizer is behind the scenes. So what I'd like you to do is just make a note of where your type is, which temperament and which interaction style it usually correlates to, because later on we'll be going into breakout groups based on temperament first, then interaction style, so you'll know which groups to choose. Okay, so that was a little bit of background just to fill in perhaps some missing pieces on what's temperament and what are interaction styles. I have another question for you, which is, how do you feel when conflict occurs? And again, I'd like you to pop into chat your thoughts on how you feel when conflict occurs. Horrible. Yeah, nice one, Sarah. Me too. Fear, usually upset, uncomfortable. Depends on whether it's resolved or not. Yeah, interested, challenged, interesting. Immobilizes you at times, in flight mode, frustrated, sick to my stomach. Yeah. And that actually probably, Elizabeth, is a common reaction, particularly for INFPs, that feeling in your stomach. Curious, interesting. Yeah. Be curious, not furious, as Sharon would say. Yes, thank you for those. So for most of us, we have unpleasant feelings when conflict occurs. And usually when conflict blows up out of nowhere, it's usually because our values and beliefs have been infringed, as somebody said earlier. And I mentioned earlier the bear, what I call the bear. This is like a chain reaction from our beliefs, our values and beliefs, to our emotions, to our actions, to our results. So when conflict blows up and escalates quickly, it's usually because somebody's values and beliefs have been infringed. We have a deep attachment to our core values and our core beliefs. And if these are threatened, we react emotionally. The amygdala, the limbic system, the more primitive parts of our brain react. We have an emotional reaction before the more rational prefrontal cortex can kick in. And this, of course, is why road rage occurs. So if somebody cuts you up on the road, you know, you'll be there making rude signs or beeping on the horn or whatever. And then later on, you think, oh my God, that was my neighbor. Or, oh dear, perhaps they were rushing to the hospital, and you feel bad. But these emotional reactions occur before the more rational part of our brain can kick in. So the emotions lead to actions. We do and say things we don't necessarily want to do, and we get results that we don't necessarily want to. So the question is, how can temperament help us here? So there are specific trigger points for conflict based on our temperaments and the values that are important to us. So on this slide, I hope it's not too small. I hope you can see some of the values and beliefs that are important to each temperament. And for an improviser, they have their values and beliefs are that it's good to have freedom and spontaneity and action and fun and so on. And they get triggered emotionally when there are too many rules, there's hierarchy, when they're bored. So for example, when improvisers are sitting around in long meetings or having to read long documents, they find that stressful, they don't like it, and they react in ways that you don't necessarily expect. They may well lash out or whatever. For a stabilizer, their values include being reliable and responsible, doing their duty, keeping the wheels of the organization or the family ticking over. And they get triggered if anybody questions their reliability, or if anyone suggests that they're not responsible, or if other people ignore tradition. So when people aren't following the rules or the procedures or the norms, that triggers them, and they can have an emotional reaction and perhaps get into a conflict situation. For the theorist, and I know this one quite well, being a theorist myself, our values are very much around being competent, being good at things, having mastery, being independent, having achievements. And we can get triggered negatively when other people tell us how to do things, or tell us what to think, or question our competence, or when we make mistakes. And, you know, we almost sort of trigger ourselves to some extent if we make a mistake and get something wrong, because we hate getting things wrong, or feeling powerless. And the catalysts, their values are around being unique and authenticity and harmony. And again, they get triggered negatively when people don't, or when people behave in a way which doesn't create harmony, perhaps when there's too much debate, too much challenge, unethical behavior, when there's a lack of integrity. So these sort of things can cause our values, our beliefs to be infringed. We feel threatened, we react emotionally, and we can get into that negative chain reaction of the bear that I was talking about earlier, where we do and say things that we don't necessarily want to do. So, having given you that very brief overview, what questions do you have at the moment? We'll shortly go into breakout groups. So I think I'll just check first whether you have any questions at the moment or comments.
Catherine, you mentioned in the bear model that there were commonly emotional reactions. Have you talked to people about their temperament and some of the emotions that come up typically for them?
Yes. And you're probably more of an expert on this, Catherine, than I am. I'm always a bit nervous talking to groups like this. Yes, I mean, I think if I can speak for myself, for a theorist, for me, you feel frustrated, you feel angry, you feel irritated, you feel annoyed. In fact, in the handout, I quote a case study that I've got actually from, which is in the book. The book is full of little case studies. And this particular one is a stabilizer who feels, in fact, I'll read it to you. So Josh is a project manager in a water utility company, has stabilizer temperament. He has strong technical and planning skills, is diligent, prides himself on meeting deadlines. He feels that one of his team, Leanne, doesn't react quickly enough to requests. She's a theorist. When he asks for progress reports, she tells him that it's all in hand, but doesn't give him the evidence he wants, nor show a sense of urgency. Leanne hates having her competence questioned in this way and reacts by telling him to relax, which winds him up even more. So that's the sort of thing, Catherine, that I've, you know, explored with people. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's the sort of the way I tend to think about these things. And actually, anecdotally, there does seem to be quite a lot of evidence of conflict occurring in organisations, particularly between stabilisers and theorists. But Catherine, yeah. Do you have any comment to add, Catherine, on?
Well, one of the things that I've found very useful is asking people to explore what it means if they're crying or tears, because there can often be very different meanings for different people.
Lovely.
Based on temperament or type. And that can be a real eye-opener, that behavior that someone had interpreted in one way actually had a different emotional connotation for the person experiencing it.
Yeah, and of course we never know where other people are coming from, do we? Although we can use models like temperament to try and understand where they're coming from, there's all sorts of other things going on in people's personal lives that can trigger those emotions. Yes, thanks, Catherine, for making that point. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest or ask is that we go into breakout groups shortly. The handout that is on the conference website, and Sarah may have posted it into the chat, I think, has these questions, has the slide we were just looking at. There's a copy of that in the handout. And I'd like you, when you get into your breakout groups, just to talk about what sort of situations challenge your values. How do you respond when triggered? What advice would you give to yourself? I'm very happy if you talk about something else. And Catherine's last question was very interesting. So I'm more keen that you have a useful conversation in the breakout groups. And I think we're okay for probably about 8 minutes for this. And I'd like you to agree one person who can capture just 2 or 3 key points to share with the bigger group when we get back. So Sarah, if you could launch the breakout groups, and if you can just choose the breakout group, the temperament group that aligns with your type preference. Sarah, are there rooms? Oh yes, if you scroll down, you might need to scroll down. I've just had to scroll down on mine.
Beg your pardon, yes.
Yeah.
So it's got everyone's name there, and then if you choose which temperament group you want to join, please.
Yes, scroll down beyond the names and you should be able to see the rooms, and then you can choose which one correlates with the temperament that you think you have.
Not doing very well here.
That's right, Teresa. We should be able to move you. So
Yeah.
you're catalyst, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Sarah's moved you, and Carmel the same.
I can't see where I'm supposed to be. Is it in the chat?
No,
Yes.
not in the chat.
No, it should have come up on your screen.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry.
Are you catalyst, Carmel?
Yes.
I thought you were. I'll assign you.
Thank you.
I'm in the same position. I can't see anything. Sorry, Catherine.
And you're
I'm catalyst as well.
You're catalyst, okay.
Okay, yeah.
And Tove is another catalyst.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Rowan, what's your 4-letter type?
INFJ.
Another catalyst.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Daniel.
It's David.
Sorry, David. Yeah, it is David.
Theorist. It sent me into the catalyst group for some
I'll
reason.
put you into the theorist group now. Oh, there we are. I think we've done it.
Thanks.
Yeah, should have thought to have 2. I should have thought to have 2 catalyst groups. Ah, and Lynn, stabilizer.
I was in there, but no one else was in there. So I'm like, I wondered if I was in the.
Oh, no, you're not. You're the only stabilizer here.
Oh,
Other
wow.
than me. Other than me.
Yeah, so why don't you two stay here and have a chat amongst yourselves?